Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of our podcast, BI or Die. I'm Kai, and today I'm particularly excited that once again I'm able to record a podcast with a fantastic company from the Stuttgart region. Of course, I have several ones. I remember one with Daimler TSS, so shoot out to Thomas Krumbein here. Maybe you can also connect that in our show notes of this podcast session, also about Power BI and how to implement the strategy and idea in the Mercedes-Benz context. But today have something even more special than that. Especially it's the big brother, the big sister. So Mercedes-Benz herself is here. So that's very, very, very great. We managed to get also an incredible personality, interesting personality. So I'm very happy that you're here. You're a senior data scientist, and it's great that you're here. I'm very glad about that. So how are you?
I'm good and really good to be here. So, really looking forward to the podcast. I think we talked about doing this a few weeks ago and took a while till we could finally sit down and do this. So, really looking forward to it.
One thing I forgot to ask you in the pre version of our chat, and that was the right pronunciation of your name, and that's why I was not probably introducing you. So maybe you do that for yourself. Maybe a few words about yourself and also the proper pronunciation of your name, maybe.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Sachin. Basically, I'm from India, so it's a pretty common name out there. I'm basically working as a data scientist, senior data scientist, if the title counts, but a senior data scientist at Mercedes-Benz since 4 years now. Before that, I studied electrical engineering back in India. During my time at Mercedes, I've worked in a lot of different teams. I've started off in finance, where we were doing a lot of machine learning, a lot of predictive analytics. And now, since the past 2 years, I'm working at research and development, which is basically where we are engineering the car, building the car, pretty much all of it. And I work with car data on a day-to-day basis. So doing everything starting from the data collection process, data governance, data engineering, data analysis, talking to different stakeholders so that we become more data-driven as a company.
I mean, Sachin, the role as a data scientist is probably considered as the most sexiest job in the 21st century. Now you work as a data scientist for a major brand like Mercedes. You also already mentioned that. You even moved from India to Germany doing this job. So can you share maybe what it means for you being a data scientist and of course working in that automotive context at Mercedes-Benz?
Yeah, I think the thing with the data science role is everybody has their own definition of it a little bit. Your responsibilities are quite broad. There are certain data scientists who are more customer facing, so their main role is to talk to stakeholders. They may not be doing so much programming. And then there will be some data scientists who are much more on the data engineering side, so doing things like Python, PySpark, Scala, all of that. I've kind of been across the spectrum of it. So, when I started out, I was really doing much more of the programming. And as time has progressed, my role has become much more business facing. And there's, of course, a huge number of people that I work with who've taken on the data engineering responsibilities. So I think, yeah, it's quite a broad role. And depending on the team and the setup, it really does change over time.
And is there just a favorite, let's say, focus you're dealing with? Or is it just the interesting part that it changes over time? Or what is your personal favorite focus in the spectrum of data science?
Yeah, so for me, in my current role, I basically get to analyze how customers use our vehicles, use our products. And of course, we basically collect real-time telemetry data with consent, and it's heavily anonymized. We're very, very sensitive about data privacy as a company. But despite the anonymization and everything, you can still see a lot of insights, a lot of patterns. So you can see all kinds of things about how customers use different features in the car. So going all the way from autonomous driving features like Distronic to body and comfort features like massages, or just the infotainment system, things like CarPlay or navigation or the voice assistant. So pretty much encompassing every single part of the vehicle, see how customers use that, and really use those insights to take better decisions in the future.
I think that's even a very, very interesting part in the automotive sector. You mentioned, I think, the process of having not only the, let's say, normal EIP stuff data, plus also the car by himself is more or less producing data, is in the automotive sector, I guess, a very challenging but also very interesting aspect of that. Maybe you can share your insights, what you actually do with all the data that the car is collected and maybe also connected then to the ERP system and stuff like that. But what are your insights? How do we actually make better decisions, or which kind of decisions are you actually doing based on the data?
Yeah. So essentially, every single part of the car, every single feature in the car that's getting developed, there is a team behind it. And oftentimes they're relying on different marketing surveys or their personal experiences to figure out how people actually end up using it. And that's not the best way to go about it. So especially in the last 5 years, what's happened is we've started getting telemetry data from our vehicles, and now we're able to tell how the general customer uses every feature in the car. So whenever there's a discussion about how this feature should be developed, and there's a difference in opinion in the room, someone saying, I don't think this is true, and someone else saying this is definitely true, basically you have some data where you can look at. And this happens very often, from small things like whether you should place a button 3 layers deep in the head unit or 4 layers deep, for example, or something like whether you should even build that feature at all. And it goes all the way from every aspect of it, right? Starting with autonomous driving, body and comfort, the infotainment system, the rear seat infotainment system, which is also there in our newer models now. So pretty much every single part of the vehicle, there's a team which needs to take that decision, and having data really helps them a lot.
And how data driven is actually the process, or how much creativity, intuition is still in the development of such a car, or is it, let's say, 100% data driven? But it sounds a bit like that, but probably it was a little oversaying.
No. So I mean, first thing is, being data driven is never going to take away from creativity. I think it's only going to add to it. And it's only going to redirect you in the right direction. So not that you spend time being creative in a completely wrong direction. I think that is what data is going to correct for. As for how data driven are we, I think the first thing was, a few years ago, we didn't even have data collection mechanisms in place. And now, if you look at the industry as a whole, and also at Mercedes-Benz, pretty much every company has big data in their data lake. And where companies kind of struggle is to maximize the potential of the data that's lying in their data lake. And I would say, even for us, we've definitely not maximized our data potential. That being said, we've made a lot of progress in the past 5 years. There's certain parts of the company where they really look forward to getting data, and when they're struggling to make a decision, they really come to us, and this is really very rewarding to see. But there's, of course, still other parts of the company where we're still working on it, and it's work in progress to bring every single stakeholder into the same mode of working there.
Do you think the higher challenge is actually collecting, storing the data, making that available, or it is rather really creating the data products, implementing the communication processes and stuff like that, so that really people become data driven and that they have access to it and can use it. And also maybe you can share some insights into how you, for example, work with more, let's say, business driven or development side of the people. So how is that process actually going on, or what are the products you're providing them so that they can hopefully create better cars, making better data driven decision and saying, okay, do we need this service, or do we extend the service, or should we shut down the service, etc., something like that?
Yeah, I think in terms of data collection and storage, those are things which were really big issues 5-10 years ago. And at this point, I think the industry has really really figured that out. I mean, I'm not saying that it's not evolving. Of course it is. But there is a really good baseline there. What is still a struggle for most companies, I think, and also for us at Mercedes, is to make the whole company data-driven. So I can share some of the things that have worked for us. So the first thing is, start small, start with the first few stakeholders, and they will be your most annoying fans, let's say, who will keep asking you questions, keep following up, and they'll also be your best marketers because they'll also share, hey, this is what's going on, this is what's possible. Besides that, share a lot of success stories in terms of, we have our company intranet where we share what we can do with the data, some really cool case studies. And a lot of times people read those and they reach out saying, oh, I wasn't aware of this. Can you tell me more? Can you also do this? Can you also do that? So that's the other thing which works. Third thing is having a strategy. That's very important. And for us, basically, we have a standard set of KPIs that we try to track and run our business by. We have targets for these, which we want to reach by the end of the year. And, we also have growth measures, things that we're going to do over the course of the year so that we can actually achieve those targets. And the other thing that we do is, there's always going to be a lot of ad hoc requests. Not everything is tracked in those KPIs. So having a standardized process for people to reach out to when they have those questions, that's also been really helpful for us.
So these are the 3, 4, 5 recommendations or approaches. You said, okay, this is really enforcing us to, the significant concept of becoming data-driven, enabling also people to be data-driven, and also pushing this data culture forward. Or any addings you would add to the mentions you had already?
Ooh, I mean, I could go on this topic for quite a while, of course. I think the one thing that is also very important, which I think I missed, is data privacy and also data quality. So let's talk about those two things. So first thing,
the more annoying stuff. I mean, you mentioned the cool stuff about, okay, the success stories. I mean, we can touch those maybe in a few moments as well, your personal favorite success stories, but also the communication part and more or less enabling the people. But of course, let's talk about those more background stuff as well.
Exactly. I mean, those things, especially for data scientists, they can be quite annoying, because as a data scientist, of course, I would say, just give me everything. But that's not how the world works, right? There's data governance in place, and it's there for good reason. And so it's very important to work with the right legal colleagues. So we have a big legal department here at Mercedes who we work with from the get-go. So even before we're starting the data collection, we say, okay, this is the data points that we want to start collecting. At what level of anonymization is it possible to do this, where we are still within the realm of the consents that the customer is providing. And we're always going on the side of being more conservative there. So we try to avoid taking risks in that domain quite a lot. And then besides that, I think it's important to have quality monitoring systems in place. So bad data is the worst data. Like nothing breaks trust like one bad data case study. So that's something that needs to be a big focus always. So any data pipeline will break down from time to time. So it's important that you're able to identify when that happens, make sure that your dashboards are cleaned up in a way that the numbers are okay. Maybe having some sort of disclaimer that, hey, we had a outage during such and such phase. That's totally okay, but it's not okay to just put out bad data and have some bad decisions made because of that.
The good and also the bad thing about that is that it's probably a never ending story. So it's good for all of us, basically, but it's also a message. I mean, it's an ongoing process. It will probably never be in the stage saying, okay, that's the perfect or the best ever level. You will always probably trying to achieve as good as possible quality, or the one that is necessary to being able to improve or add value to the whole ecosystem of Mercedes-Benz. And as long as you're achieving that, this will always be part of your journey, I guess.
Exactly. I mean, also the other thing is, the world outside us is evolving, and so will the data pipelines and the data use cases, and also the governance policies surrounding this data. All of these things will always be evolving. So it is a never-ending journey as long as we are progressing as a company.
I mean, you mentioned that as one of the major approaches, sharing success stories within the organization, letting those people being aware of what's possible with the collected data and how you improve your organization by that. So are there also, just speaking a bit more practically, a few stories you were able to share to our listeners saying, okay, they are kind of your favorite ones, or the one, okay, I've heard of that and this impressed me a lot, or something in that direction you could think of?
Ooh, Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a lot. So this is definitely one of my favorite things to do in the organization, right? I love sharing these success stories, loving the feedback that I get. We now have a huge community within the organization that follows us and is always asking us questions, engaging with us. So that's great. In terms of like very specific stories, I think overall, when we introduced like this process of tracking certain KPIs with which we run our business and having growth measures and those kind of things, I think that was really a big moment for us, because that was the first time when we said it's not just there's a data request, we do some analysis, and then we take a decision on it, but much more rather that we're actually using KPIs to drive the development of the car in a standardized manner, where there's certain specific people who look at these KPIs every single week or month, however often they need to. So I think for me that was very special, simply because of the amount of impact that it has.
And anything else? Maybe also concerning, you mentioned all those services within the car and that you track that somehow in an anonymous way. I get that, but also some insights or things you can share in that direction, because I mean, probably everyone is maybe just by coincidence using all those services, but any fun story about that, how you're increasing those services, or anything even our listeners can test then whether it's somehow reacting to their how they deal with that, or anything?
I think it's kind of like, it's a big organization, of course, so different things, different KPIs are important to different people. And so we've kind of split it up by cluster, where we say, okay, there's autonomous driving, these guys have their own set of KPIs where they, wake up in the morning, look at them every day. And when a service isn't performing as well as you would expect it to, it really is a question of, okay, what could be the potential reason? Is it an awareness problem? Is it that the feature isn't built well enough? Is it just that its UI needs to be improved? So those are all kind of questions where we discuss it internally with the data, what could be potential interpretations, and then we try to really derive growth measures. But I think at the moment it's really hard for me to be specific about one particular service where we're able to divulge that information. I think that's a bit hard for me to do.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, we touched also kind of the aspect that when you do all this community stuff for only one reason, actually to enable people being data driven, as you're not only talking about data culture but also about data driven people. So I think that's also a very important aspect. Maybe first, and then I continue my question afterwards. Maybe the first aspect I'd like to ask is: are there just any, let's say, insights you can share about this community work? Because a lot of companies are doing this community stuff and realize that it's very, very important. So are there just some best practices you can share what really helps your organization pushing all those big topics really forward? Success stories, you mentioned that already, but just more insights into that. What is your daily work in really creating an active community?
Yeah, I think it's a big organization, of course. So there's plenty of people who reach out to you with a lot of requests. It's quite easy at times to get bogged down by it. So it's important to be patient, be understanding, be respectful of everybody, firstly. So hear people out, understand where they're coming from when they have a data request. That's the first thing. And then the other side is also just kind of broadcasting information where you're saying, this is what's possible and this is what we were able to do. So if you were able to do like an extremely detailed UI analysis of how customers are using the head unit, that's something which people look at the first time and go like, okay, well, this opens up a lot of new doors. So really focusing on things which are broadly applicable rather than very narrow case studies. Or even if you're focusing on narrow case studies, try to talk about the principles rather than just that specific feature. So, for example, there's a lot of niche features in Mercedes cars that we tend to analyze. And if I just share that without sharing that we could also do it for pretty much the 1,000 other features that we have, it's not going to get the same level of engagement. And the other thing is also just generally as a product, right? A lot of product principles apply. So a lot of times if someone is developing a new feature, they're not sure whether they should go with style A or style B. They say, okay, let's put it as a setting in the menu and we let the customers decide. And then you end up with this thing which has 1,000 different features and nobody really knows how to use the. This is something where data can generally help. And if you kind of tell the story in that direction, that really resonates with a lot of people. And then they go like, okay, I've had this same discussion or along the same lines in a different room, and that really resonated with me.
So finding kind of the proper approach and the proper level so that everyone is kind of being interested in it, but still being able, okay, I had similar, as you said, challenges or whatever, and being able now to get some insights into that and then improving mine as well. So of course, and additionally, I think it's a lot about continuity. So just pushing all those little things out, and then on one day it's something in for me, and on the next day it's maybe something in for some other colleagues. That's also, of course, this continuity, and not every post, not everything you provide to the community is probably used by everyone. That's also for sure. And even if you're not getting the best, let's say, statistics about this specific post, it could add a lot of value for even a niche group within your organization. So there's probably also a different view on that you have to apply.
Yeah. I
And
think just to add to that a little bit, right? I think we're talking about niche features and stuff, right? I think, for example, we did an analysis of something called car wash mode. So car wash mode was this thing where you go into a car wash and you press a button and it closes all your windows and sunroof and things like that. So it's a pretty niche feature, and we were just looking at the usage rates of that to see whether we should have that in the car or not. And I think, based on the analysis there, we were like, yeah, it looks pretty good. Looks like decent number of customers are using it. And it's just one example where, it resonated with a lot of people. And we got quite a few requests afterwards where people were like, I really enjoyed that. Maybe you could also do it for this feature that I'm building in the car.
But maybe I guess even in the Swabian region, my bias would be that it's a very, very often used feature. But anyways, they probably love to watch their Mercedes every time or every week, whatever. Anyways, what's important for you, it's also the global scale of your teamwork. I mean, it's quite normal for you to moderate between China, India, Germany, US, I don't know, whatever locations your global data science team is working at. Is there any insights you can share on this international cooperation, how this works, what the challenges are, why is it working so good in your ecosystem? That is also, I think, a very interesting approach, this international cooperation among the data scientists and also among whole Daimler Mercedes ecosystem.
Yeah. I mean, so as you said, right, we have teams in the US, in Germany, in India, and China. And I think the first thing is everyone brings in slightly different perspectives. Everyone has their own style of doing things. So it's important that we're able to learn from each other, not just at a technical level, but also at a business level. So that's the first thing. Second thing is data governance changes as you go to different parts of the world. So China has its own laws. Europe, we have our own laws, and the US, is again, slightly different there. So it's really helpful to have all these different data teams also to be able to manage the data collection in the most optimal way, because you probably want to optimize it as per the laws that you have in the different regions. So that's the other thing that really helps. I think challenges, time zones is a big issue. It's very difficult to get everybody together in one meeting at the same time. So we also very rarely do that. I think we have like a once a month frequency where we bring in people from all over the world, and it's kind of an all hands thing. But generally, there's a lot of bilateral exchanges going on, in the sense that Germany is discussing with China, and China is discussing with US, and we're discussing with the US, and also with India very similarly. So I think time zone's a big issue that we have our own way to work around that and find a collaboration model that works for us.
And concerning the organization-wise speaking, is there kind of a central organization and then there are multiple, let's say, with a local focus, or is there just one global team and then they have, let's say, some local experts, or how's that organization-wise?
So organization-wise, here in Sindelfingen, that's the headquarters, essentially. And so also the higher management is from here. So they're generally, if there's a topic coming from here, generally that of course gets precedence. But again, you have to also see that these markets, US, China especially, they're very big markets. They're very important markets. So there's generally a pretty big collaboration. And what we find is if there's a topic that's popping up in Germany, it will pop up in China. Even if we don't bring it up to our colleagues in China, it will pop up there kind of automatically in a few weeks' time, because that's just generally how things go, right? If someone is like, I'm worried about the quality of such and such feature, can we do some data analysis to get more insights into it? It pops up world over around the same time. So
Okay. And if you like to motivate some other data scientists in the world, or some data scientists listening to this podcast, why it's the best possible place or the best possible ecosystem to work with you guys, or to work in the Mercedes-Benz ecosystem, anything you like to share here coming to the end of our podcast, why it's so special to work at Mercedes-Benz, or why it's so challenging, and why others should do as well?
yeah, I think it's so. Firstly, we make the best cars, and just being around that, being in that environment is really interesting. Uh, and A car is these days has so much engineering in there. There's so much going on, and all the people who are building it, you get to meet all of them. And data is like a central point for pretty much everybody. So you can talk to the guys building the battery, and the guys building the navigation system, and the guys building the autonomous driving systems all in one day. Yeah, it's definitely a lot of interesting experiences. And I think if you're passionate about engineering and about software, I think Mercedes is a really, really cool place to be.
Talking about passion, do you have a favorite Mercedes model?
Ooh, I think historically speaking, I would say the Gullwing. That's
Okay.
quite iconic. That's
Sure.
that's gonna be a tough one to beat. But I think
But for that, you probably have to go in the Mercedes-Benz museum. It's probably quite a challenge to get one of those.
Yep, that's true. That's true for sure. But I think that is definitely an iconic one. But among the modern ones, I think the S-Class, the Maybachs, they're really, really cool. There's so much luxury in there, so much attention to detail. That yeah, it's really nice.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, thanks a lot for your time, for joining this podcast here, making it even possible. I highly appreciate all the effort for you before of this, ahead of time, this
Yeah.
podcast. And yeah, it was great that you've been our guest. I really enjoyed it. And as it always the case, at the end of each podcast, our guests have the last words. So I say already bye bye. And yeah, and you, the stage is yours for the last, or your last famous word of this podcast. Thanks a lot again, Sachin.
No, so it was really, really cool being here. And I think as for last words, I would say, yeah, Mercedes is definitely a very, very cool place to be a data scientist. And yeah, we've made a lot of progress in the last 5-10 years. There's still a long way to go. And I'm really looking forward to this journey of making this amazing company data driven for the coming years.
Perfect. Bye bye.
Bye.